If you are wondering about what this war is going to be like, how it's going to unfold, how long it's going to last, this week in our channeled message from Isla, the mother of creation, she is sharing the details with us, letting us know that this war may not be super long lived, but it is not isolated, that there will be waves, 3 waves of war. So welcome back to my channel, you guys. I'm so happy you are here, happy to share this message with you. And I want to let you know that even though we are talking about what's to come related to this war, this is a very uplifting message. This is not going to be a gloom and doom fear message. This is about how you can navigate this time in the way that it's meant for our highest and best to draw us closer and closer into our higher state of consciousness. So I'm really, really glad you're here. And if you are new, welcome. My name is Ann Tucker. I am a trance channel. I channel from the angelic realm, and I channel Isla, who is the mother of creation. She is the mother of all souls. And I do that by going into a deep meditative state or trance. And from that trance state, I connect and I bring in those messages, healing messages, information, and I share it here with you guys on YouTube. So, and as I said, this week's message is going to be about the current situation that we're in with war and how that's going to unfold in the near future. I'm going to first share the original channeling, which I did yesterday. So I have the video of that I will share with you. And then after that, we break it down and talk it through. And you will find you get a whole lot more out of the message by doing it that way, because as you're receiving the message, it's like frequencies from Isla move through you, and sometimes it's hard to hang on to the words. It's hard to make sense of things because it shifts your mind, your brain into a more receptive state, and language doesn't work so well there. So that's what I experience when I channel her, is I can get the images, but not the words so well. So just let it move through you, receive what you can get from terms of the words, and then afterwards we talk it through and you'll get all of the meaning. So we're engaging the heart as well as your alert mind. All right, you guys, take a deep breath. And let's go ahead and share the message. Blessed beings, we are together once again. We are speaking on the topic of tomorrows, on what is happening, what is occurring, and where things will unfold. What is happening now is an expression of life. It is how life overturns itself in the process of discovery. And what you are witnessing in the political sphere, in the war games that are happening, in the various trials of separation and violence that you are hearing about or perhaps witnessing, is life finding itself through the contrast and separation that occurs in heightened states of antagonism. This is a stage of your own separation. It is a process through which you gather yourselves to yourselves. This is not, in fact, a mistaken period. This is not a byproduct of your awakening. It is, in fact, the passageway through. It is the pathway to indicate that you are, in fact, headed in the right direction. Though it contains struggle, violence is always unwelcome. It does prove to you that you are sovereign. It does draw into you faith in your own selves. It restores to you faith in how you are made. As you are witnessing how the world undoes itself, you can return to your own self-fortification. You can renounce what is external and draw into the sovereignty of your own blessings. You can remove yourself from what is that violence and dwell within the certitude and the knowing that you have created around your own spiritual self, that you are one who does not perpetrate violence, that you are one who does not instigate trouble. Within that wholeness, the separative path continues, And you are asking, how will this unfold as we move forward? Is this gestation, this familiar path, just beginning? Or are we near an ending? And I'm afraid the ending is not close to come. There shall be skirmishes ahead. There shall be violence to come, even more. There shall be playing fields that are not where they have been in the past. There shall be moments of incursion on American soil. There shall be placements of violence where they are unexpected. And this is not a desirable outcome, I understand, but it is a simplified method through which humanity can come into its own understanding of its own sovereignty as a passageway to separation from what is the now reality. It is a device to wedge you apart from the container of this life. As the energies are unfolding, what shall transpire is waves, undulating waves of occurrence. This is but one, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it shall fold into separation. It shall become and become again and become a third time. And upon the third instigation of warlike tendencies, all shall erupt and unfold itself to its own detriment. Thus have faith, you are close, it is not far. There shall be pauses in between. It shall not evolve all at once. It shall come and surrender again. And there shall be new players who enter into the fray. And this shall all become a turmoil once spoken and always heard. A turmoil that does, yes, in fact, lead you into, again, deeper and deeper levels of separation from the current reality. It is a forcing function. It draws you apart and away from what is external, from the now of this time. As this is occurring, what is your poignancy? How may you find your center? How may you create meaning from what seems senseless and harmful? And I would say to turn inward. And this is often the blessing that is given as you are facing the troubles in this world. It is to turn inward, is to realize that you are in fact sovereign, that you have a choice for how you react, how you feel, and if you surrender. You need not participate bodily in your mind frame, in your emotions. What upset you feel in these occurrences is generative. It is drawing forward for you what will draw you into separation from the current now reality. Allow these emotions to transpire. Let them rise within you. Become fluid in your listening to yourself. Let that which troubles you rise in distinction into your awareness. Let it come until you feel a harmony settle upon you. This is a method by which you instigate greater and greater degrees of freedom and harmony within yourself. There is a turning point that arrives, yes, a turning point upon the conclusion of the third instigation of warlike tendencies, when all things feel as if they can trouble you no more, when all things rise to a heightening crescendo of violence and sea storm and mud being born, when all things feel as if they are unfamiliar and uncategorized, you will align to your truth more completely, and the gestation becomes palpably felt, and humanity's new birthing will emerge. You will discover yourselves riding the waves of alignment that come from the heavens, that stir within you the deepening roots of the tomorrow's reality. And this will come within the time frame of your own understanding of it. Therefore, have no fear. You cannot miss it. You are generative beings. You create the new reality. It stirs from inside of you. Thus, have in your knowing, in the power of your own comprehension, that these waves of violence, yes, perpetrated within this consciousness and this reality, need not affect you to the degree that you might worry. You may pull apart, separate, by living in the now moment in the fullness of your own completion. Have in your own understanding that violence is a response to a need to be witnessed. And if you are witnessing yourself, you need not partake in witnessing that is external. You have all that you need within. To be witnessed through violence is a method that occurs for humanity at large and humanity as an individual. There is a spaciousness within the interrelationship between people, between individual people, and between nations. And in that space, there can emerge a needing, a requiring of interaction. And that interaction can often be provoked into violence within a container. This is a method by which needs are met. These needs are often karmic, and they result in a disturbance of what has been. Great creators of change, these occurrences. They drive humanity forward. They are not, however, easy. They're not pleasant to live with. They're often frightening, and they result in great trauma to the participants. War will not endure beyond this field of reality. It has an ending, and the ending comes near. But know for yourselves that participation is voluntary, even within the context of a world gone crazy. You have a field of your own, which carries within it your own sovereignty, and you may choose how you react. You may choose how you respond, and those responses are generative, and they can create, even in a field of war, they create your own inner peace. I say blessings, thank you, and goodbye. Yeah, gorgeous message, gorgeous. Like lots of poetry in this one, lots of it. So Isla and the angels were coming in together on this one, which was amazing. It's Isla's voice, but the angels were like right in there too. So you probably heard a little bit of angelic language in there here and there. And but yeah, it's beautiful and uplifting, and then also giving some really specific information, which I think is really helpful, because it's a little bit like for those of you, if you've ever gone through something really, really tough, like when I had my LASIK done, they moved this machine down on my eyeball, and they had to put this pressure on my eyeball to keep it still, and it was really uncomfortable. And but if I had to sit like that for a long time, I would have been like, okay, get that off of me right now, you know. But they told me, okay, this will be like, 1 more minute. And I thought, okay, if it's only 1 more minute, I can handle this. Like I can do 1 more minute. And knowing the time frame made a really big difference, because it calmed me down. It allowed me to kind of stay like, open and not move and keep still, and all the things I had to do for that to work. So I think that's the idea here of us knowing, like, okay, what can we expect generally, so that as we're sort of tracking our own emotional reserves as we go through these times that are increasingly chaotic, we can say, you know what, I can do this. I can stay in my vibe. I know how to gauge my own energy, to say, this is how much exposure in the world I can take today. And then this is when I need to return and restore myself, that I don't need to hide in a box, because I know it's not forever. And I can be out in the world. I can be sharing my light, which is what we're meant to be doing, right? Knowing that this is not forever. So yeah, so I think it's really helpful from that perspective. And she does touch on, some of the more very, very specific details. She talks about that there's going to be stuff happening in places it doesn't normally happen. So, and that I think can really create shockwaves. It's like, talk about feeling You never feel as unsafe as when it's in your own backyard. Even I'm, as you guys know, live in the US, and like when the Twin Towers hit, like this nation freaked out. Absolutely freaked out. Pearl Harbor, nation absolutely freaks out. So if something happens and she says something may happen on American soil, you can imagine like what the reaction might be and how everyone in the US is going to respond, and how the people around you might freak out. And so how helpful is it to know in advance, and we can decide in advance how we are going to react? Like, what is of service in that moment? If this happens, if something like this happens, how can we be most of service? And I think it's like, I always think about when I'm trying to think about what vibration I want to be in, I realize what it is. Like when you take your young child to the zoo, and there's like a great big bear, and the kid looks up at you like, Mom, am I in danger, right? Should I be afraid? Is this scary? And if you respond with fear, the kid is like, oh my gosh, this is scary. Whereas if you respond like, no, this is fun and you're safe and everything's good, then the kid is like, oh, okay. And they're just looking for you to read the situation for them. And as old souls, as people who are further along on their spiritual path than most people in the world, then people will naturally be looking to you. Right? How are you responding? How do you respond? What is your take on this? And even if you're not talking about it, you're showing it in your response. You're showing it in, are you relaxed or are you uptight? Are you scared or are you trusting? And so that is our call to action, right? Is to think in advance about, okay, and to start to take it in. This could happen. And it's not just in the US. It could be in, as she said, unusual places we don't expect it. So what would happen in your neighborhood if something happened, if there was some sort of a terrorist attack, if there was some kind of, and it's not like we want to dwell on that. So keep it very hypothetical, but you can answer in a moment how people would respond, and then immediately move into the thought processing of how will I choose to be of service in that moment? What vibration can I hold? What feels authentic to me? And in terms of being responsive. So like one of the things that comes up for me is listening, is letting my kids talk to me about how it might make them feel, and giving them that sense of support, as they might be processing an event like that, if it was to happen. Is to try to make a conscious effort to be a sounding board for them who is positive and who's not afraid, and who sees this in the context of a bigger picture and knows it's not going to be forever, right? This is a process that we have to move through. I think the other thing that's incredibly helpful about this message is that it is giving us like that. No, I totally lost what I was going to say. It'll come back. I totally lost my train of thought because I realized I've already started reading the message. I just had total brain fart. So let's just keep going. Thank you. Where was I? So, okay, here it is. Oh, meaning. It was about meaning. She shows us meaning in this message about how we can make sense of it. And I think in our choice of how to react, we can choose to give it meaning for others. And I think there's nothing that helps you to deal with circumstances that are difficult, nothing more helpful than when it feels like it's not senseless, when it feels like it's part of a bigger picture. So this message, I think, goes a long way to helping us understand meaning, the meaning of why it's happening. Okay, so let's go ahead and break it down. The first paragraph, she says, "Blessed beings, we are together once again. We are speaking on the topic of tomorrows, on what is happening, what is occurring, and where things will unfold. What is happening now is an expression of life. It is how life overturns itself in the process of discovery." So the image that came to my mind when she said that was like, do you remember being a little kid? And I grew up in Southern California where it's really dry, so you don't have a lot of mud. And it used to be fun to turn rocks over because underneath every single rock, there was like a whole ecosystem of like little critters. And so it's that idea like life overturns itself in the process of discovery. Like for a little kid, there's this process of discovery. You overturn the rock and yeah, you're creating havoc for all those little pill bugs. But it's, as a little kid, just like, ooh, look at who's living down there. And this is like how life is, right? Is that life is never static. Life is always changing. Life overturns itself in the process of discovery. And she goes on to say, and what you are witnessing in the political sphere, in the war games that are happening, in the various trials of separation and violence that you are hearing about or perhaps witnessing, it is life finding itself through the contrast and separation that occurs in heightened states of antagonism. And antagonism is like interference and hostility. So this is heightened states. So we are at the stage right now where things are coming to a boil. We've talked about being the frog in the boiling pot and how things are getting increasingly crazy, and we're getting to these heightened states of antagonism where it's like we're practically in the full on boil. We're right on the brink of full boil. So this like, and you can see it, right? If you could say compare the world today to the world in 2020. 2020 was crazy, but I would argue that today is weirder. Like these days is weirder than 2020. Like you look at the world and you're like, how? Like how can that be happening? And it's everything. Every headline is like, what is going on? Like what? We did what? You know what I mean? So I don't speak for myself. I know that we all are sharing this sense of like, what's the word? Anyways. Yeah. So then she goes on to say, this is a stage of your own separation. So this is what's happening. This is why we're going through this right now. That it's like, imagine if you had two cells in mitosis that were pulling apart. And if you look at the little image of what that looks like when the cells are like mid separation, how everything gets all jumbled up, right? It's like all the little things, the mitochondrias or whatever that are inside the cell, they're all mixed together. It's all chaos in there. It's all mixed up as they're kind of choosing sides. Which cell are you going to go in? And so this is that stage that we are in right now, right? We are in the process of separating. So it's a stage of our separation. She says, it is a process through which you gather yourselves to yourselves. This is not, in fact, a mistaken period. This is not a byproduct of your awakening. It is, in fact, the passageway through. It is the passageway to indicate that you are, in fact, headed in the right direction. So interesting to think and feel that it's not senseless, that it's very purposeful. And the fact that it's happening shows us that we're getting increasingly close to a final separation and moving into this higher state of consciousness that we are all very, very excited about. So next paragraph, she says, though it contains struggle, violence is always unwelcome. And so I think this is interesting. So though it contains struggle, she's not saying that struggle is unwelcome. She's saying that violence is unwelcome. So why is that? Struggle is welcomed because struggle helps us grow. So she's trying to say through this whole thing, the message, this is on purpose. This is not an accident, right? The struggle is okay. The violence, not so good. And I don't think the violence was necessary, to be honest. I think that we created it, right, because we are generative and we went that way. And she describes how we created it later in this message. So we'll go into that when we get there. But we did require this struggle in order to be able to find ourselves. So she says, the struggle, though it contains struggle, violence is always unwelcome. It does prove to you that you are sovereign. It does draw into you faith in your own selves. It restores to you faith in how you are made as you are witnessing how the world undoes itself. You can return to your own self-fortification. You can renounce what is external and draw into the sovereignty of your own blessings. And renounce means to formally give up or to reject something. So it's that idea of saying, okay, yes, we're living in a world of war, but I am not war. And it's like, I don't resonate with that war. I am not creating that war. I am not reflecting that war. That war is no part of who I am. And in renouncing, this is the interesting piece, to say that you renounce something, because no words are accidental in these messages, is like saying it out loud. It's like verbally saying, I'm not that. I am claiming my own sovereignty, and that war is happening, but I am not, even if you lived in the middle of it, you could say, yes, I'm existing in the middle of this war, but I am not that war, and that war is not a reflection of who I am. And I don't claim it. I reject it. I give it up and I reject it. So it's really like making a conscious decision to say, I take no part in that. And this is any war, because there's many wars going on right now. And you could just, for any of them, you could say a war in general is no part of who I am. And then going on next paragraph, she says, you can remove yourself from what is that violence and dwell within the certitude and the knowing that you have created around your own spiritual self, that you are one who does not perpetrate violence, that you are one who does not instigate trouble. Within that wholeness, the separative path continues. So this is how, right? Is that we can look at it and say, yeah, war is violence. I'm not violent. War is trouble. I don't create trouble, right? And that creates a wholeness, a sovereignty to you. It helps you feel like you know your own boundaries, right? You know your own worth, and you know who you want to be in the world. And that is part of creating this separation in frequency. It raises your frequency apart from what's going on in the world. Then she goes on to say, and you are asking, how will this unfold as we move forward? Is this gestation, this familiar path, just beginning, or are we near an ending? And I'm afraid the ending is not close to come. And so what she's talking to is specifically about the wars, like the war in Iran and the wars that are happening right now. Like, is it close to, she's saying that the war in general will not end soon. So war as a thing is not going to end soon, that we're going to have a process to go through. But the reason she's saying that is because I believe that this particular, and I'm speaking specifically of Iran, I don't think it will last very long. My guess is like 4 months would be my guess. That's not channeled, but that's a feeling that Iran itself won't last very long. But there's plenty of other things going on in the world at the moment. But war as a thing. So I think that's why she's making this point, that even if that particular war ends, then it doesn't mean that we're done yet. That there's more we have to get through, is what she's trying to say here. She then says, there shall be skirmishes ahead. There shall be violence to come, even more. There shall be playing fields that are not where they have been in the past. So in other words, places where war happens, playing fields, places of war. And she calls it war games and playing, and that's not disrespectful to how, she doesn't mean that to be disrespectful to the idea of war. I think it is putting it into, she's not glorifying it. I think that's the idea, that she's not calling it like the heroism of war. She's saying like, look, they are playing with lives. They're playing with, that she's the opposite. It's the opposite of glorifying war. But she's also acknowledging that it's violence, that it harms people, all of those things. So there'll be playing fields that are not where they have been in the past. There shall be moments of incursion on American soil. There shall be placements of violence where they are unexpected. So I think it's possible that we could see some terrorist acts that might be very surprising for people. And I think that's one of the things that we can, knowing that or having that idea that could happen if we just say that's a possibility, it's not a fact, it's not absolutely going to happen. But we can take a moment to think about what vibration we want to be in if something like that happens, and who we might want to support and how. And just so that it's the idea that if you're caught flat-footed, you might not have the right words ready, right? And if you come into it with a knowing, then you're ready to respond from a place of loving support and acceptance. And that's a thing. It's really funny. Like, I remember when I went through my first divorce, and I was just like, how, if any of you have been through like all of us have been through some kind of major upheaval where you then have to turn around and face the rest of the world, whether it's like, a major illness or a major job loss or a major divorce, and then you bump into people for the first time since it happened, and you have to tell them. And it's awful. It's like that awful experience. Doesn't matter what it is, but it sucks. Like, whatever it is you have to tell them, you're like, oh, this feels terrible. And I talked to a friend of mine who gave me the best advice on my first divorce in that perspective was the hardest, because it was the breaking of my nuclear family, so it was like the one that felt the most like, oh, it's going to affect the kids, and everyone's got an opinion about that, and blah. And my friend gave me this amazing suggestion, which was figure out in advance what you're going to say, and you don't want to say something that makes people feel sorry for you, right? Because that doesn't feel good. So come up with what you're going to say that keeps you out of story, that keeps you out of blame, and that answers the question in a way that makes you feel good. And have that answered right at the hip, so you know exactly, because a question's going to come. Have it ready. Have the answer ready. And it was brilliant advice. Like, it helped me so much, where I didn't feel every time someone asked me that I had my tail between my legs. I felt like I was able to answer it from a place of both feet on the ground. And so I'd say the same thing with this type of any kind of thing like this too, with this concept about war. or any kind of violence, or it's like, how are we going to respond? Let's think about it in advance and have that. And it could be just a generic, all encompassing, when crazy things happen, I want to be in this vibration, whatever that crazy thing might be. I want to be in this vibration, and I want to hold this type of support for others. So it's something to think about. She goes on to say, and this is not, so these incursions, this idea of things happening that we might not want. And she says, this is not a desirable outcome, I understand, but it is a simplified method through which humanity can come to its own understanding of its own sovereignty as a passageway to separation from what is the now reality. It is, I love this line, it is a device to wedge you apart from the container of this life. And there you go. That's our meaning, right? That's powerful. So it's a thing like when you see something that is so out of resonance with you and you look at it and you're like, there is no part of me that relates to that supports that wants that. It increases. It's like a wedge that comes between you and forces you apart. This reminded me, I don't know if any of you guys, I think Kristen Bell is really funny. She's an actress. She's a comedy actress. I think she's super funny. And she was in a movie. I didn't watch the whole movie, I confess, but it was in it. She's dating this guy. He's like a Jewish rabbi. And at one point he does something like that's like really like that for her is like very uncouth. Like he wears like a blazer over some athletic shorts or does something. And she's telling her sister, she's like, he gave her the ick. And she calls it like the ick, and if you know what I mean, it's like when someone does something like, oh, they chew their mouth open or, something, and you're like, oh, like I just can't date that person anymore. You know what I mean? And like, that's what we're getting. We're getting the ick. And so we're developing the ick about what's going on in reality. And so that is the wedge that's going to come between us and what's happening in the world. And it is of service, right? It motivates you to extract yourself from things that may have been convenient, things that may have been comfortable. It causes you to like, you're forced because you're like, I just can't stand it anymore. I cannot have that in my reality. Okay, I will finally take whatever step I need to take internally to say, I reject this reality and I move into this higher frequency. So we're cultivating the ick. All right. And then as the energies are unfolding, what shall transpire is waves, undulating like an undulating wave. It's like this, an undulating waves of occurrence. This is but one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It shall unfold into separation. It shall become and become again and become a third time. And upon the third instigation of warlike tendencies, all shall erupt and unfold itself to its own detriment. So here is a helpful piece of information for us to be able to gauge where we are in this process, right? That there are going to be sort of 3 separated events that happen that are warlike, and that we can count them like tick, tick, tick. Okay, here we are. So here's 1, and then there's 2 more. And she says the third is the biggie. The third is the one that will bring everything else to a close. And the good news is that after the third, then no more war. That humanity is done with war after that. Like literally no more war on earth, peace on earth after that, which is like, hallelujah, right? Like incredible. Yeah, incredible. So yeah, it's a lot to get through, but the wedge, we're building the wedge. We're separating apart from what was. And what that means in the future is we may have to get through some difficult stuff, but on the other side is what we all want. So it's worth it. And there's a pathway for us where we can move through it in a state of grace. And that is in fact what we're meant to do. So, and she says it'll unfold itself to its own detriment. So it's not like we have to fix it. It will wear itself out. That war will end itself. So we don't have to worry about fixing it, about changing it. Let it run its way out. Let them come to their own conclusion, because they will. And then it says, thus have faith. You are close. It isn't far. So in the beginning, she said it's not close, but what she meant was war in general. But as we can see now, we go through that. So the first thing that we go through, the war that we're in right now, that is not the ending, is what she was trying to say. Go through 3. And then there is an ending in sight, right? So have faith. You are close, it isn't far. There shall be pauses in between. It shall not evolve all at once. And so this is important because one of the things that Angel said a long time ago, when they were talking about the changes that are happening, is they said that the world's going to continue, that the economy will continue, the world will continue. Like, you can still continue having a life as all this stuff is happening, just like you do now. Like, there's wars going on all over the world, and all of us still have lives, and we're still doing our thing. And maybe there's things that have changed, but we're still creating lives for ourselves. And I think that's important to recognize, that it's like, the way I think about it is, the world is a really, really huge place. And if you've ever accidentally stepped on an anthill, you'll see that, oh my gosh, I just like crushed part of that anthill. And immediately the ants are going bonkers, right? And they're running all over the place. But there's some parts of the anthill and some parts of the ants that are just business as usual. And they're just continuing along their little pathways that they have. And they're not even aware that part of the anthill got crushed, right? They're still continuing on. And then the ants, where the hill got crushed, they reorganize themselves. And it's literally, like, sometimes it's like a half hour later, they're back in business again. So that's humans. We're ants, right? That even if things happen, like, there's so many of us that we just reorganize ourselves. And there's whole parts of the earth. Like, you can have a major thing happen. Amina's totally laughing at me right now. Thank you, Amina. But you can have whole huge things happen in the earth, and around the earth, and like think about this, like Tonga exploded, massive volcanic explosion. It was heard halfway around the earth, and none of you were affected. Zero people here were affected by Tonga, right? And so that's the anthill. Like, so someone stepped right in the anthill, and the rest of us were just like, I'm going to Starbucks, like, we had no idea. So like, the life will move on, and we may have changes. There may be things that alter. Like, we've talked about some of those things. Like there could be rationing. There could be things happen, like during wartime, where you like, what those kind of things happen. And that's why I'm like, have your bag of rice and your bag of beans. Like, have some stuff set aside if that's important to you, if you like that, if that gives you a feeling of comfort. But life will move on. Life will continue. It just might look different for a while. And then it progressively will get better and better and better. So, okay, where was I? And then she says, there's pauses in between. It shall not evolve all at once. So what that means is, in those pauses, we can build the anthill again. Like, we can restore ourselves a little bit, right? We can come back to center a little bit. Like, we can continue on with our lives. It shall come and surrender again, and there shall be new players who enter into the fray. So there's going to be people in war who are not in war currently. And this shall all become a turmoil, once spoken and always heard. So what I understood from that is that it becomes like history. So it's spoken into reality once, and then we hear about it forever, right? So these are major events that become part of our history, part of what we talk about forever, once spoken and always heard. A turmoil that does, yes, in fact, lead you into, again, deeper and deeper levels of separation from the current reality. So then she says, it is a forcing function. It draws you apart and away from what is external, from the now of this time. As this is occurring, what is your poignancy? How may you find your center? How may you create meaning from what seems senseless and harmful? So poignancy means, like, how are you deeply affected? So as this is occurring, like, one of the roles that we are meant to play is to make meaning out of it. And this is how it becomes of service, right? We are meant to look at what's occurring and say, so for example, for me, having that fall I took on my back, and my first thought is, okay, how is this serving me? Like, as I'm laying there, I've had the wind knocked out of me. Like, how is this serving me? What does this mean to me? And it puts it into perspective. And I don't feel like, that mean, ice that made me slide. And you know what I mean? No, it's like, it was of service. And how is it of service? And that helps me to process and to integrate it and to understand that the world is not doing things to me. It is doing things for me because I have the meaning. I understand. And so this is part of how we're meant to move through this. So we're meant to find the poignancy, like, where are we deeply affected, and then from that try to find your center, right? So we're not in the feelings, we are observing the feelings. So notice your deep feelings, Observe your feelings. Don't be stuck in them. Be looking at them from your spiritual perspective and say, wow, this is really triggering me. And then how do you create meaning from what seems senseless and harmful? So it's a 3-step process, right? Find it and then step aside from it and don't be in it. Observe it and then create meaning from it. All right, so then I highlighted this next paragraph, and she says, and I would say to turn inward, and this is often the blessing that is given as you are facing the troubles in this world. It is to turn inward. It is to realize that you are, in fact, sovereign, that you have a choice for how you react, for how you feel, and if you surrender. You need not participate bodily in your mind frame, in your emotions. So, and whenever I hear this kind of advice, I always think of Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, which Wendy was so kind to send to me. Thank you, Wendy. And it is an amazing book about a man who was in I think it was in Auschwitz, in a concentration camp, and how he made sense of that experience and how he turned it into something that was beautiful for him, right? And I always look at that and say, man, if he can do that, like, then we can do anything, right? If he can do that, we can make meaning out of anything. We can find the beauty, we can find the pathway through for anything. And sure enough, she's talking about like how you may create meaning from what is senseless. And the pivotal moment is we have a choice for how we react, how you feel, and if you surrender. And I love that phrasing, given that we're talking about this is coming up in the context of war. But you're saying, well, how would I surrender if I'm not even in the war? I don't even live near it. Well, how do you surrender to the dialogue about the war? How do you surrender to the news cycle about the war, to the fear mongering about the war, to the anger, to the whatever, right? Do you surrender to that? Or do you choose not to? Do you choose to say, no, I'm going to remain sovereign. I'm not going to I'm not going to go, I'm not going to swim in that flow. I'm going to choose not to. And I'm going to stay in my own light. Right? And that's not surrendering. Next paragraph, she says, what upset you feel in these occurrences is generative. It is drawing forward for you what will draw you into separation from the current now reality. So in other words, when we do have emotions come up, it's useful. The emotions are part of what's going to make us, it's going to give us the ick that we want. We want the ick. So if you get upset, be like, great, okay, I'm upset. That's because I'm not in resonance with what's happening. Notice that, right? That's our spiritual perspective. We step aside and we say, wow, look at that. I'm really angry because this is not who I am. That's why I'm upset. I'm upset because this is not a reflection of me. Let it be the ick that helps you to separate from the current reality. She says, allow these emotions to transpire. Let them rise within you. Become fluid in your listening to yourself. Let that which troubles you rise in distinction to your awareness. Let it come until you feel a harmony settle upon you. This is a method by which you instigate greater and greater degrees of freedom and harmony within yourself. So it's this process of like not repressing it, letting it come forward, sitting with it until you feel like you've witnessed your own experience. And that's what will bring you harmony. And then next paragraph, she says, there is a turning point that arrives. Yes, a turning point upon the conclusion of the third instigation of warlike tendencies, when all things feel as if they can trouble you no more, when all things rise to a heightening crescendo of violence and sea storm and mud being born. Okay, so that's a handful right there. So what she's saying is that in this time period of the third instigation of war, whatever this will be, which I have a guess based on what the angel said before, my guess. So we know from and this is in this book. There's a section in here where the angels, it's going to be, I'll just tell you. So if you're not familiar, this is the book, What's Coming Next, which has all the channelings from the angels from 2020 to 2024 that goes through sort of all the events that are currently now unfolding and a lot that haven't yet come. But one of the things that's talked about in there is a war experience. And what the angels say is in a time period when the U.S. is distracted, where we're not able to participate, which is, I think, what we're coming into this year. I think this is the year that we're going to see. This could be the year where we end up where the current president is no longer president, which is in that book, where we have then our government in a state of flux. So this is all part of what could be occurring in this year. And I think that then could, and who knows, it could be this year, it could be into next year, but we're in this time window where this kind of stuff could start coming to the surface. So if we're in a place where the US is not in a place to be charging into war, then what the angel said is that opens the door for China to invade Taiwan. And when they said when China invades Taiwan, that Japan will rally the rest of the world against China, and that then opens the field for a much larger situation. So that would be one potential lever of, and those would be people like right now Japan is not in the war, right now Taiwan's not in the, so this is like, this could be how this unfolds. So what she's saying is that, so if we're in that state where, and then she mentions in here, when all things rise to a heightening crescendo of violence and sea storm and mud being born. So there's a lot of messages in the book about sea storm. As a matter of fact, there's a message in there where the angels said that shipping would be a catastrophic industry. So sea storm, and I've gotten specific visuals of the ocean sloshing, and we know there's going to be some major waves and flooding and crazy stuff that's going to come. And then mud being born. So mud is part of that incursion of water coming in. So this all could be happening in the same time window is what she's trying to show. Third instigation of war, sea storms, mud, right? So we kind of have this understanding that that would be the time period that this kind of stuff could come together. When all things feel as if they are unfamiliar and uncategorized. So, and I think that right lands smack on the word that we have all heard like so many times since 2020, which is unprecedented, right? This is everything's unprecedented. It's like the word. Yeah. And so unfamiliar and uncategorized is what that is. It's stuff that is outside of, I can't believe this is happening. And so, and then she says, when all things feel that way, you will align to your truth more completely. Because in that moment, what you're feeling of like this is so bizarre and surreal. It means that you don't belong to it, right? You have officially separated from it at that point. When you no longer feel any connection, when you're just like, this is like weirdo planet. At that point, you have separated, that's what we're trying to do. So, and then she says, you will align to your truth more completely, and the gestation becomes palpably felt, and humanity's new birthing will emerge. So the gestation being palpably felt reminds me of, like, think about when you're pregnant or when you've been around someone who's pregnant and you see the baby kick for the first time, right? You see the little heel poke through as they're sitting, on the couch, and you're like, I can see. That's where we're going to be in that moment. We're going to be able to see the baby kicking, right? There will be see the evidence in the baby moving in the belly. And that's exciting in that moment, right? That the moment where we're just like, this planet is not like, how did this this is no part of who I am. We have separated, right? The baby is kicking and we can see it. Very exciting. So humanity's new birthing will emerge. Next paragraph, you will discover yourselves riding the waves of alignment that come from the heavens. So this is all the energy we're getting right now. The waves of alignment are all the energies from the solar energies that are coming, that are raising our frequency, that are helping us right now. And then, of course, the big one, the flash of light. And then she says that stir within you the deepening roots of tomorrow's reality. Love that. Stir within you the deepening roots of tomorrow's reality. So what that says is the roots are already there. The roots are deepening, right? We've already begun. We know that we birth, the new reality is already started. We're just growing it. We have to weave it like a tapestry, and we're in the process of doing it. But all these energies that are coming will stir those roots, right? In a good way and help them to grow. And so, and then she says, and this will come within the time frame of your own understanding of it. Therefore, have no fear. You cannot miss it. So it's going to be a thing like where all of a sudden it clicks, right? Where all of a sudden, like, you put two pieces together, like I did when I was talking about my experience where I suddenly made sense of how I felt about my daughter not having a close connection, when she was little with her grandparents, and how I didn't see how that was connected to me until this past week, and then it was like all the dots connected in my head, and it was like, how could I not see that before? And we will get to that point about things, bigger picture things, right? Where we will, and when that happens is we will then make that shift of consciousness even more concretely. So it's going to be a thing where it just happens, where we don't have to fight it or struggle with it. It will just come. And it will come within our own time frame of your own understanding of it. So where each of us will receive it as we're ready. Therefore, have no fear. You cannot miss it. And then she goes on to say, you are generative beings. You create the new reality. It stirs from inside of you. Thus, have in your knowing, in the power of your own comprehension, that these waves of violence, yes, perpetrated within this consciousness and this reality, need not affect you to the degree that you might worry. You may pull apart, separate by living in the now moment in the fullness of your own completion. And then this next paragraph, I think really helps to explain, like, how can this not affect you? How is it that she says living in the now, feeling complete yourself? So why is completion? Like, why choose the word completion? Why is it important that we are complete? And here is why in the next paragraph. What she says is, have in your own understanding that violence is a response to a need to be witnessed. This was one of those like kapow moments for me, right? That I'd never thought about this before. And it makes so much sense. Like, why is it that people are drawn into violent relationships or violent situations? They're drawn into that, whether they're the perpetrator or the victim of that violence. It is the response to a need to be witnessed. Right. And so it makes me think about, like, those, like, will you remember being back in like kindergarten and there would be that kid who acted out? And like what the psychologist would say is that that child doesn't know the difference between good attention and bad attention, that attention is just attention. And we know that, like, we know that when a person is neglected and when they don't get any response from their parents, but when they do something bad, at least they're noticed, at least the parent sees them. So being witnessed, we have a huge need to be witnessed, right? To be seen. And to be witnessed is like to be witnessed in our pain, to be witnessed in our glory, both, right? We need to have that reflection back to us. And so what she's saying here is that violence is a response to that need. It's one manifestation. It doesn't always turn out that way. Most of the time it doesn't, thank God. But it is one of the responses. And and that's on an individual level. And that is for humanity as a whole too, that we can have the need to be witnessed. Like, think about, man, does our president in the US right now need to be witnessed? Like, he's like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, and I need another prize. Give me another one. So he likes to be witnessed. You know what I mean? And that's he's got that Leo. He's a Leo. I don't know what his fullest Leo something rising, but it's definitely, he's got that need to be seen big time. And so for him to be drawn into war is not totally shocking. And I don't mean to make this political at all, you guys. So I apologize if that offended anybody. I definitely don't mean to offend anyone, but I'm trying to make a point about this idea of being witnessed. And so let's just leave it on the Leo rising or Leo birth chart and not about anybody in particular. But if you are witnessing yourself, you need not partake in witnessing that is external. You have all that you need within. And so this is the key. This is really the point of it, is that if you are witnessing yourself, you need not partake in witnessing that is external. So when we hear that we have everything inside of us, this is what is being told, what we're being told is that we have the ability to give ourselves the love that we need. We have the ability, like, all we crave is to be heard. Like, when we have feelings, we want someone to listen. And the person that's going to do the best job at that is me. I'm going to listen to myself the best. You're going to listen to yourself the best. And it's like if somebody hurt your feelings and they apologize, it helps a little bit, but it doesn't help nearly as much as you thought it would, right? It doesn't actually erase the hurt. The hurt is still there. And what often feels the best is if you take a minute, turn inward and just watch your own feelings and listen to your own feelings. And that's what finally heals. So the person's whose attention we actually want is our own. Like, that's what fills the wound. And so this need to be, when we're looking outside of ourselves to try to be witnessed, when we're trying to get that need, that feeling of like, I just need to be understood, we're trying to get it met outside of ourselves, it creates a vacuum. And then that vacuum draws in all kinds of stuff. And some of that stuff can be, if it's a match, for what your past history is and your karma, it can draw in violence. And so it was a really interesting spin on that idea of what violence is. It's a response. It's just a response, right? That's all it is. And it doesn't have to be part of your life. So you have all you need within, and you can witness yourself and eliminate that vacuum. So, to be witnessed through violence is a method that occurs for humanity at large and humanity as an individual. There's a spaciousness within the interrelationship between people, between individual people, and between nations. And in that space, there can emerge a needing, a requiring of interaction. And that interaction can often be provoked into violence within a container. And this is a method by which needs are met. So, in other words, the container being a relationship. And if two people come together and if their karma is a match, if their past history is a match for the expression of violence, and there is that need to be witnessed, it can erupt. Violence can erupt, right? So within the relationship. So that's what she's saying. And it can be between nations. So interesting to think that nations would need to be witnessed, that is a need for a nation as well as, as a community group. Like if it makes sense, if it's true in small ways, it's true in big ways. So all right, so then going on, these needs are often karmic and they result in a disturbance of what has been. Great creators of change, these occurrences. So they serve a purpose, right? Even though, and this is again going back to making meaning, right? This is how we process this stuff. So if you have been the victim of violence, if you have been in a violent relationship, how do you make meaning out of that? And it is through, and so that you can integrate it and come to peace. And it is that idea that it is a creator of great change, right? Talk about a wedge. Talk about putting a wedge, getting the ick so bad that you have to finally do something. It pushes you, right? To move, to change. And so a creator of great change, these occurrences, they drive humanity forward. They are not, however, easy. They're not pleasant to live with. They're often frightening and they result in great trauma for the participants. So it's not an ideal way at all, but it happens. And then she says, war will not endure beyond this field of reality. Woohoo! Right? So we are getting to peace on earth. That is the goal. And the angels said in that same book, they said that once we get through once the flash of light comes and we move past that sort of third wave of war, we will achieve peace on earth. And peace on earth is what's required before we can have connection with our galactic friends. So that is when we open the door to becoming galactic citizens, which is like so cool. Yeah. So, and we're not far, you guys. This is our lifetimes. This is happening. And we are like in it. We are in it to win it. Like we're in the final, I feel like we're in the final lap of the crazy. That's what I feel. So, but know for yourselves that participation, it has an ending and the ending comes near, but know for yourselves that participation is voluntary. Even within the context of a world gone crazy, you have a field of your own, which carries within it your own sovereignty. So it's really important to recognize anytime we feel out of balance, recognize we are sovereign and we can make a choice, right? And that doesn't mean that we bypass our feelings. It means that we take a moment and we notice and we are the witness for our feelings, right? We become our own witness so that we can heal. And that healing creates more of a wedge between us and our reality. It gives us more and more distance, moves us closer and closer to the new reality. So, and she says, and you may choose how you react. You may choose how you respond. And those responses are generative, and which means they create a reality for you. So in the moment, every moment that you choose to respond differently, you're generating a new reality that doesn't include those experiences. And she says, and they can create, and even in a field of war, they create your own inner peace, right? I say blessings, thank you, and goodbye. So very cool message. I feel like it's a wonderful balance of helping us to understand where we're headed so that we can think about our response, so that we can serve ourselves and others in the deepest way possible as we're moving through this experience. And I think it's really important to know that we are moving through it and it has a purpose and it has meaning. And the meaning is the key, right? The meaning is how we come to peace with what's occurring and we understand that this is of service. So, but it doesn't have to be our reality. And that, right, we process our reactions and then we move into that separation state, which is what we all want. So I feel like as these events are happening, as we manage to separate more and more from the current reality, I feel like we are, and it's like Isla said, it was like we're stretching in in a moment, and then later another moment, and then later another moment where we get to touch that new reality. Like I'm finding my mornings lately have been just magic, like magical times. I've been working on my book in the mornings, which is I'm like when I'm working on the book, I'm totally in flow with Isla, so it's like happy times. I'm still in my body and I'm conscious, so it's like yay, bonus time. I'm not in a trance, but I am. I guess I put on like great music and I got my coffee and I'm working on the book and I'm like in seven. I just literally I'm like so dopey. I'm laughing out loud by myself. But it feels amazing. It feels absolutely amazing. And I'm not always able to hold that vibration all day long. You know what I mean? It comes and goes. Like in the morning, it's the easiest because I'm fresh and I'm in my own vibe and there's nothing else going on. And then during the day, sometimes I slip from that vibe and I'm not feeling, I'm generally a pretty happy person, but I'm not in that state constantly. It comes when I'm at my best. And so like I could just imagine a time when we're in that state all the time, but in each moment that we're able to achieve and as we stretch, that's when those crazy experiences come in, the telepathy, that amazing connection that we're developing with one another. Yeah, that's when those start to pop in, which is very, very cool. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing the message. Phenomenal conversation today. Sending you guys tons of love. And I will see you guys next Friday live. Bye, you guys.